It's a very complex, technical, aromatic world. So in order to convey that, I've really had to learn the art of storytelling, the act of teaching people how to taste.
Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Linen. My name is Dani Valent and this is the podcast where we talk about food. All things food, people that grow it, people that make it, people that cook it, and definitely people that eat it. I'm coming to you from Melbourne, Australia. I am a restaurant critic, a food journalist, an eater, an explorer, a cook, although often eating out these days, not cooking as much as I would love to. But I do have something I want to share. I find it hard to celebrate the achievements of this podcast. Even I should say, I should probably be saying the achievements of myself and my producer and the whole Deep in the Weeds team that hosts this podcast. But I've just realised I'm not much of a one for rankings and such like, but it's just come to my attention that Dirty Linen is the fourth most popular food podcast in Australia. Wow. I was really surprised and thrilled to notice that. So the top three, there's a couple of UK podcasts, and the other Australian podcast in the top four is The Junkies, Dave O'Neill and Kitty Flanagan chatting about junk food. So that makes me want to do a crossover pod with them to celebrate being up there in the most listened to food podcasts in Australia. Thank you to everybody who is a listener. Thank you so much to our guests. Obviously, it doesn't happen without you. But yeah, I really appreciate your time. There are so many places that you can put your attention, and to be in your ears is an absolute privilege. I definitely don't take it for granted. And I'm so happy that it's resonating with people out there. Today's guest is someone I have known for a long while, but recently reconnected with. Sarina Kamini is an author, a cook, an explorer, an absolutely brilliant communicator about food. You are going to find that out in our chat. Welcome, Sarina, to Dirty Linen.
That's a lovely introduction, Dani, and congratulations on your amazing achievement.
Thank you so much. I think, it can be hard to toot your own horn. It's not something I'm good at. I have to force myself to do it. But it is important, especially as women, I think, to celebrate our achievements.
Oh, and it's a worthwhile one. It's such a flooded podcast market. So to be number 4 in Australia, with good reason, I shall say, because I do listen to your podcast all the time. Amazing guests and really incredible social work through food that you do as well, awareness around all the sorts of perhaps issues that people don't necessarily think about when they think about hospitality. So, yeah, well done. Amazing.
All right. The rest of the podcast is all about you, but thank you very much. So, Sarina, you've just put out a book, or it's about to come out, it is called What We Call Masala. It is beautiful. Subtitle is A Cook's Practical Guide to the Poetry of Indian Spices, 74 spices, 85 recipes. Let's start with the book. Tell us about it.
What We Call Masala is actually, it's my third book on spice. I've done a memoir, a very practical spice guide, but What We Call Masala is my Jerry Maguire moment. That's how I frame it. It's really a manifesto of 10 years of teaching classes. As you mentioned earlier, I've worked as a food journalist since I was 20, so 25 years or so. And then most importantly, a lifetime of what I call as my Indian daughter qualification. So growing up in a Kashmiri Australian household and just really, I think, for want of a better expression, buying into the mythology and the culture and the beauty of masala. So I guess masala is the architecture of regional Indian cooking. It talks about aroma. And I'm preempting this question from you because everyone asks me what actually is masala. So for me, it's just the book is a body of work that expresses a connection for me to my family, to my heritage, and to a real belief that food is something special, and the act of feeding ourselves and feeding others extends its tentacles into our lives in all sorts of ways we might not think about. And I think that book gives people the opportunity to think differently about taste and about feeding ourselves and about flavour.
Tell us about some of the different ways we could think about feeding ourselves, about flavour, about ingredients.
Well, what We Call Masala really does lean really heavily or find its roots in Kashmiri Hindu tradition. So Kashmiri Hindus are a small ethnic minority from the far north of India. And for us, flavour is about recognition. It's a type of a storytelling, and the types of stories that an Indian householder tells are stories that connect children to prior wisdom. So it's more than taste and it's more than food, because we rely so heavily on faith and cultural history and things in order to find our identity. So in What We Call Masala, we explore things like ideas around digestion and health that tap into our physical bodies, but also our emotional and our metaphysical bodies. We think about ideas of our sensory body and the expression of our sensory body, and using that, using our sensory bodies to guide us in our choices. And I guess sensory body is a term I've come up with. I mean, I haven't come up with it. The sensory body is a pretty established thing, but it refers to, I guess it's a short circuit where we're not tapping into our thinking brain or our intellectual capacities. We're actually using the signals that our body sends us when we eat to help us to allocate feeling and emotion in order to ascertain how we can best feed ourselves every day at every meal in order to nourish ourselves across all of our systems, taking into account our whole selves as people, as opposed to just, I'm hungry, I need to put something in my mouth. So it's quite a thoughtful book in that regard.
It's incredibly thoughtful, and actually I think pretty revolutionary in Western culture today. And I mean, yeah, it's not just Western culture. There's anyway, what I want to say is that connection or that trust in the body, in the messages that the body is giving you, it's quite radical. When there are so many other ways that we get messages about what we should put into our body and what our body needs and wants and what's the right thing, what's the right way to treat it. Like, do you feel that?
Yeah, I do. You can see, I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear it as I'm answering your questions. It's actually a really difficult book to talk succinctly about, which is unfortunate when you're on like a press tour for a book. But my elevator pitch is terrible. But it is radical. And I think, one of the things about writing the book in the first instance was getting a publisher to actually validate the idea that this was something that people wanted to hear and that they could understand and would buy. That was a huge stumbling block. And then when you do get into that position of being able to, or when I got into the position of being able to write the book, just all of these barriers for me around, is this information too far out? Like, is it too radical? Are people going to read it and just think it's too much for me, I don't want to go there, or I think she's making it up, or any various iterations of those sorts that sort of went through my brain through that process of writing it. But I really stuck with it because it's not like, Dani, I've done it, I think, and people over in India, a lot of the time when you talk about East and West, that delineation is so much less now. So because of big words, but, like modernisation and globalisation, industrialisation, all the sort of words that we throw about, but they've radically changed societies everywhere. So India, in terms of what people would classically imagine is like Eastern approaches to eating, well, a lot of that has been usurped by what we classify as Western approaches to eating, which would be, convenience, not thinking, following trends, all those sorts of things. Well, they're just as prevalent in India as they are in the West. But the difference with India, I think, for me, is that underlying it, there's this very old tradition and culture that's fed to children through traditionally the matriarchal line. So it comes down through the mothers, because the mothers are traditionally what we would call the householders. And in Indian cultural tradition, the householder has it's a role, of course, of a practical role of keeping a family together, but it's a cultural and a spiritual role of ensuring the connection of culture continues through family. Like in lots of Indigenous oral traditions, it's really important that stories are told, because the stories hold identity and the stories hold connection to the things that we've believed in as a people for a really long time. So I know I've sort of gone away from what you actually asked, but that radical idea of listening to the body is tricky to articulate in a society like Australia, which doesn't have a strong religious framework, because there is actually a spiritual aspect of that, which is like the art of learning how to listen and learning how to listen to the ways in which our body talks to us. And for everyone, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, I would love you to try to anchor this with an example, whether it's from your own family or something that you've seen in your travels.
Yeah, I think be more specific in that question, like in terms of being able to...
but something matriarchal, like something that's passed down.
Oh, gosh. So many things. Like we have a practice that I call domestic Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is the traditional Indian system of medicine. It's a really strict system, but there's also this very domestic practice. So the domestic practice would be your mother saying, if you have a cold, like I'm just recovering from a cold, so my nose is a bit blocked. I was always told, like, you can't eat a banana. Bananas cause mucus. You can't drink cold milk, but you can drink warm milk with turmeric. If you have a blocked nose, you'd either sleep with an onion by your bed, or my dad would rub raw onion on the soles of my feet to draw out fevers and things like that. Now, there's so many things I could recite them ad nauseum about food and about the ways in which we sort of medically feed ourselves every day or attend to our maladies with food in a really natural capacity. So... But they sound so nonsensical and so fantastical, because they're actually, what they're saying to you is there's a whole system that's non-intellectual around food that really is just about your body as an animalistic form and the sensory space of your body, and learning how to recognize those signals so that you can inhabit that space really fully, inhabit your body really fully, and begin to understand your own signals and begin to understand what those signals mean, and then how to feed yourself through that in order that you can live a life not just of really delicious, beautiful food, but of delicious, beautiful food that sustains you exactly the way that you need to be sustained. And that's what attracted me to it, because it wasn't about punishment or don't eat this or don't do that. There's this inherent capacity of kindness that's as radical as the idea of listening to your body and not listening to things that you're being externally led to believe by different sources, which may be true, but it's an outside-in approach to health. And Masala offers an inside-out approach to health through the guise of really incredible, delicious meals.
Oh, I have so many things running through my mind. Okay, let's try to lay them out. So one is, I guess, even thinking of that example of the milk with turmeric, like it relies on you having turmeric in the house, or at least that's a word that you know, or you know where to get it. So I guess it's interesting when we pluck from so many different cultures in our modern Australian lives in many cases that, there's, you've got such choice that it's maybe hard to reach for the thing that we know is right in the moment in that deep bodily sense. So that's one thought. Another thought is just this idea of these qualities that we have that we may not realize, or our deepest characters. Like, I was in the car for 5 minutes earlier and heard a snippet of a conversation about identical twins that had been separated. Stay with me on this tangent because it's going to come back to food.
I love tangents.
So there were all these studies done about, studies done of twins, identical twins who had been separated at birth, and then had been, people had investigated some of their qualities that just seemed to be somehow innate, because they were such random things as these two twins met for the first time in some airport, and each of them was wearing 4 rings on one finger and had 7 earrings in the other ear. So that but these other twins, like, it happened that each of them, when they made a slice of toast, would cut it into 4 pieces, but they would only eat 3. It's just like, what? This is amazing. So I think there's so much that's in us that is not easily accounted for, and that you might not even know. So given that, of course, like, you need to listen, and I suppose be open to listening to your body. I think there was something else, but I don't know. The other one is, I was so fortunate to have you at my house a couple of weeks ago teaching a cooking class, and I think that, like, the 5 of us that were lucky to be there found it so mind and body expanding in the way that you spoke about spice and flavour. And there's lots we can talk about with that, and indeed let's. But the thing I want to perhaps start with is the way you spoke about the shape of flavour. Okay. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, okay. Can I tell a little bit of a longer story in order to get to that? And I might even wrap up some of other commentary on the other 2 stories that you told, which, by the way, are fascinating. But so when I came to teach masala, when I first started teaching classes, which happened in 2017, and it happened because we had moved to Margaret River. We'd been living in Europe and in Melbourne and in the US, sort of all over the place for a long time. And when we came here, I came to write a book. So I went to work in a small local deli, and people got to know what it was that I did, and in terms of my expertise with spice and with flavour, and they started to ask me to teach them. And initially, I actually didn't really understand what they were asking, because when you grow up with something and it's so implicit, I didn't understand that people didn't have that knowledge. So I didn't think that what I had was anything interesting to anyone other than me. It felt like someone asking me, can you come and show me how to do laundry? And I was sort of like, I mean, I can, but I'm pretty sure you know how to do it. So eventually, a friend drew a group of people together for a first class, and it was so difficult, Dani, oh my gosh, because I realised in that first instance how much cultural coding goes into the art of masala, or the art of using spices in that regional Indian tradition. And when you sort of suddenly taken out of context, which it is in Australia, it's out of context, how do I build all of that context back in so that I can actually teach you? Because for an Indian, spices aren't about taste. They actually have nothing to do with flavour. Like, it's not about turmeric. You don't use turmeric because it tastes like turmeric. Cumin seed or cumin seed, you're not using it because it's like piney and earthy. You're using it because they have structures and they make shapes that enable us to construct flavour in really complex ways, because the mouth is a full-bodied sensory organ. So the mouth is a portal into your sensory body system. And it's not just about taste. A mouth hears, it has eyes, it detects movement. So that mouth system, which is like sort of your mouth, your palate, but also your throat, the back of your head, out the front of your nose, up behind your eyes, like all of that sort of heady space where you experience aroma and taste. It's such a complex system, and India is such a complex food that we can't rely on flavour because there's too much going on. And you can't expect your mouth to identify flavour in the volume that you feed it when you feed it masala. So we do other things. We make architecture, we make structure, we make shapes, we make sounds, we conduct movement, and we do all this in a mouthful. And we do that by knowing the functionality of spice, how it hits the body, how the body responds when it tastes that element, or the pure taste, not the flavour, which is different. Again, in Indian traditional, there's different aspects of taste and they're distinct from flavour. So it's a very complex, technical, aromatic world. So in order to convey that, I've really had to learn the art of storytelling, the act of teaching people how to taste. There's a whole section in the book about that takes you step by step through how to taste a spice. And then the book is constructed in a way, that's why the 74 sort of spices. But in Indian traditions, spice or the art of masala isn't, it's not reduced to what most people think of spices being, which is, like chili or cinnamon or whatever it is. We also include fats in that. We include things like water. Water we use to conduct spice and to temper spice in a different way so it shows different shape. The art of heat is a really important part of masala as well. So the book essentially lists in my A to Z, or the way in which I think about flavour when I construct masala, 11 different categories of aroma that each, that are sort of groupings for spices that behave a particular way and have a particular shape and stimulate particular parts of the palate. And then it's broken down in this very sequential step-by-step way with recipes that support the theory so that you can get the theory and then you can practice that through the recipe in order that over a lifetime you could actually really make a fundamental focused effort to understand that very technical body of what masala is so that you have a context for everything we've spoken about so far, which is how do you know yourself? How do you find yourself? How do you feed yourself? Well, you need that framework, and that's what masala is, and that's what I teach, and that's what the book showcases.
Oh, so good. So remember the thing I forgot before, which was that I'm going to put a link in the show notes to my chat with Anjali Ganapathy, who is from the southern part of India called Coorg. And we spoke a lot about that that knowledge of what a body needs in a certain moment. So if you're interested in this, you might be interested in that as well. Sarina, what was the process of articulating all of this? Was it about just writing down stuff that you already knew, just finding a way to say it, or was it a process of discovering what you somehow already knew?
It was the latter. It was just years and years of it. This has been my passion and my focus. It was my birthday last weekend. I was 48. I really started in earnest when I was 30. And the thing about regional Indian families is you don't get given knowledge it's not written out for you, and it's not told to you in simple ways that you can say, oh, great, thanks for that excellent tip. I'll go off now and, do my thing. It's shown to you, and then you have to be curious enough to ask. And even when you ask, quite often what you get is, I don't know, because it's almost like it's so tricky, Dani. It's so hard to learn. And I was really fortunate. My mum's Australian, or both my parents have passed away, but my mum was Australian and my dad was Kashmiri. We lived between the two places. When we were in Australia, my Kashmiri grandmother, used to come out and spend 6 or 8 weeks with us. This is back in the day when air travel was it was a really big deal. So she'd spend a couple of months and she would teach mum's Australian friends how to cook Kashmiri food, because talk about maestros, incredible. She was a mystical, magical cook. I think I was telling you one of her famous recipes, which has been lost to time, was a raita that she made with the petals of this purple flower that bloomed at this particular time of year. Like, it was just spectacular, beautiful, subtle flavour. Anyway, no one ever writes down recipes, but because she was teaching my mum's friends, my dad actually stood by the stove over a period of weeks and watched her cook and wrote down what she was doing. And then he gave those recipes to me when I left home, and I promptly put them in a bookshelf and never looked at them because I had my own, like 10 or 15-year break from family, really, a lot of issues and things like that. And because masala is so intrinsic to who we are as people, I didn't want to cook it. And when I had my two boys, sort of through my late 20s and early 30s, there was just this whole piece of me I couldn't give to them because I didn't have an Indian kitchen, and that was how I grew up. So how could I tell the stories, these unspoken stories, to my sons if I didn't know how to, I didn't I didn't know it. I didn't know the mythology. I couldn't articulate it from my hands into my pots and pans and then put it into their mouths. So I taught myself from my grandmother's recipes, and it was excruciating. Like, it was so much failure and so difficult, especially like things like dal. The simpler a food, sometimes I think the less there is involved, the harder it is to have the touch for it and the feel for it. So that was probably from like 30, 32, for about 10 years or so. I did it for myself and for my family, and I wrote 2 books. In fact, I wrote way more than 2 books, but I had 2 books published. And then I started to teach it for others. And it was like, if I hadn't have done it for myself and for my family, I wouldn't have even known where to start. Like, I wouldn't have known it was a thing. And then the next step of teaching other people, just every single time I would learn something new. Like, I would think it would be impossible to mix, say, green cardamom and black mustard seed. And then I'd hold a class and someone would freeform that, just, because they thought it looked pretty, and I'd taste it and I'd be like, whoa, that actually, like, that totally works. I would have my own preconceptions interrupted by watching other people take masala on. And that's why I know it's a transferable skill.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's. I know it seems like, and I do struggle, honestly, Dani. Like, I've lived this for so long, and I've been so excited for this book to come out, and I've been so excited to talk about it. But I do sometimes, like, it's such a beautiful art form, and it's so magical, and there is information and technical information, and just, it's endless. It really is endless. And I do, my conflict is, how do I speak to audiences, letting them know how beautiful and formally constructed actually this whole system of eating is, but then how do I also let them know that there's these tiny little ways in that make masala a possibility for any level of cook, in any culture, in any style of kitchen, from beautiful professional chef to crappy upright electric stove. Like, you can still do things across all of those levels, and that's what that's what I'm working very hard to try to speak to.
Can you say a bit more about that? Like, can you even tell someone how? Like, what is a way in?
Yeah, okay. Easiest way in is fats and salts, because they're things that we all use all the time. So quite often how I'll start a class, we didn't with you guys because it was a bit of a different structure, but quite often how we'll start a class is I have about sort of 4 salts I use regularly. So I have a fine pink salt, I have a lake salt I get here in Western Australia, I have a sea salt, and any sort of pyramid or flaked salt. And if you lay them out in a line and taste them one after the other, they give you a different experience of what salt is. Now, if you have one spice, something that you know quite well, so I always use turmeric because most people Now, funnily enough, that is the cradle to grave spice of India. It is, I think it's India's most important spice, and now it's everywhere in the world, which I think is quite beautiful. So if you taste turmeric and then chase it with a little taste of salt, and you do that across the 4 different salts you have, you see the way in which the particular salt you use will change turmeric's shape. It will change its primary and secondary taste notes, and it will change the way it feels in the mouth. So a pink salt makes turmeric classically beautiful. So classically beautiful for turmeric means it's kind of gingery, it's warm, but it's very earthy. The bitterness is soft and it's quite round for a bitter spice. And it sits in this very even capacity across the tongue. So it goes on, it feels a little powdery, and then it sets to sort of a clay, and it has a detectable weight in the mouth. Now, if you try turmeric again and chase that with like a white sea salt, it completely alters the experience for anyone. Like, you don't need a great palate. I've done it with thousands of people, and every single person detects the change. It becomes angular. Instead of being evenly dispersed across the tongue, it becomes very heavy and central. It feels like an anvil, you know, like in the cartoons when the heavy iron anvil like drops down. It feels like that. It feels very bold. It feels like, not aggressive is the wrong word, but strong. You know, like a woman who's seen it all and done it all, like a grandmother, that sort of very matriarchal type. Yeah, it's amazing. And you can do that with every spice through every salt. And so salts are a really interesting way to work with food, because once you understand that salt determines a lot of the way that shape infrastructure appears overall in the end dish, you could say a pink salt makes things softer. A lake salt makes things kind of dirtier. A sea salt makes things stronger. So if the only thing you do is say you it's Tuesday night and it's taco night, and you've got this normal salt that you use, well, make your normal meat or vegetable or whatever you put in your tacos, make it with a different salt, and have that be the only thing you change. And then see what the taste difference is. And there will be a taste difference, and it will be quite significant. So, just that one thing, it's like an entry point just to play with salts and to see how they affect your food, and then to see how that food feels as you digest it. And that tells you something about the types of tastes that correspond with your body systems and your digestive systems, and the things you enjoy eating and the way you like to feel when you're eating as well.
What about water? Because the way that you used water in the class, I've found quite mind-blowing. I actually think about it all the time. Can you talk about how water can be used to temper spices or temper flavours, create different shapes?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So water is in the fats section of the book, which I know seems odd, but it is an important part of the way we construct flavour and the way flavour can be constructed for anyone. So like salts, fats are something we all use, and just to kind of squeeze this in before I answer that question, one of the ways you can get to know masala in your kitchen is also to change your base oils in dishes that you know, because they're filters. Fats are filters on flavour. So in a lot of Indian food, what people are familiar with is ghee, and the filter that ghee offers it's a maternal filter, and it offers classically beautiful sound. So I always say that ghee is like the Sydney Opera House. Like if your aromatic bed is a choral symphony, then ghee offers them that beautiful sound perfect arena. So you get the most beautiful aspect of your aroma when you use ghee. But you don't always want that. So not all food is soft and beautiful and operatic. Sometimes some dishes are particularly meant to hit you at a harder angle, and the spice has a harder edge, and that's because we use food to address body states. So sometimes the state of our body requires harmony, and sometimes the state of our body requires something that's a bit more angular and a bit more hard hitting, and that's when you use something like water. So because water doesn't have softness, when spice tempers through water, it's like it strips off any of all of the angles become apparent in spices when they're tempered through water, and things become like, if you imagine I don't know, it's a funny vision, but imagine, like the Teletubbies bouncing around a room, and they're all kind of bouncing off each other, and it's kind of like that's kind of the vibe with like a ghee or a butter. The flavors are all bouncing off each other, and even if you hit each other, it's kind of soft and it's funny and everyone's laughing and there's this joyous nature to it. But imagine the Teletubbies put on like armor that the knights used to wear in Arthur's, the round table, like, the chainmail armors and all the So imagine suddenly you're in a room and you're all bouncing off each other, but you're bouncing off each other in chainmail armor, and suddenly actually, you're feeling the angles and the edges, and it's quite strong and it hurts and it's a bit aggressive and it's a bit noisier. That's like what water does to spice.
Wow, I love it. I just love the way you speak about food. It's so resonant but mind expanding. It just makes me think. And, I always feel like the opportunities for learning in food are endless. But I don't know, I feel like you've added a few like PhDs to the learning journey for me. So thanks so much for that, Sarina. Is there anything else that you would love to talk about before we wrap it up for today?
Oh, God, there's so much. I guess what I'd like to talk about is I really fundamentally believe that the world is a really difficult place for most people most of the time, and that one of the gifts of an art form like masala is that in a really small way every day, it gives you the opportunity to think about yourself within the world that actually really matters. And that's the world of family. It's the body that you live in. It's the way you move through your own environment. And it's the thoughts that you consume and the way that you consume them. Because when you go to the kitchen bench top and you've got all of these spices and you're making these very beautiful dishes, or even if you're making something simple, but you want to give it a new outfit or a new face of makeup, or, you want to pretty it up, or you have to, masala gives you that opportunity to be really thoughtful in your actions. In fact, you are required to be really thoughtful in your actions, and it is just an invitation to remedy ills and to provide self-sustenance without defaulting to sort of self-punishment disguised as health. Like, I won't eat this, I can't do that, like I'm on a no carb kick, or I don't know, just all the things that are out there, keto, macro, I don't know, whatever. Like, it's just because your body changes over time, and because who you are changes over time, and because the weight of what you carry actually increases over time as you get older and more things happen and there's more responsibilities. It's like it's a way to go inward. It offers an inward viewpoint and an entrance to that space where you might discover that you actually hold more than you thought you did, and you know more about yourself than you previously understood. And that self-knowledge allows you to be in the world that you are in, with all of the problems and all the things, but in a quieter way, and in a way that feels like more lovely, just in a really, really small capacity. I know that sounds like a lot for a methodology that's technically food, but it really does hold that. And I think that the book, What We Call Masala, definitely gives insights into that. And to me, it's a gift I've found so helpful in my life. And I feel really grateful to be in a position to be able to articulate it well enough to pass it on, I think, to anyone that's interested in picking it up.
Very beautifully said. I think perhaps what I would extend from that is that given that gift you've allowed yourself to sit with, you also can become more loving and more generous and, transmit some of those peaceful, quiet, listening qualities to the people around you, which, can only amplify that making the world a better place job that what you do and what your book can do as it filters out into the world.
I hope so. And also, if nothing else, it has really yummy recipes. So that's the bookseller in me. But yeah, I mean, thank you, Dani, and thanks for the time. And I do hope it finds an audience, and that I've worked really hard to write it in a way, and Murdoch Books, the publishers, have worked really hard to construct it in a way that makes it, I would say, dip in and outable. Like, there's a lot that you can just sort of get from flicking pages open here and there and taking bites, as it were, and moving at the pace that you can move, really, in terms of taking anything in, or however much time you want to give it, it will give back to you that thing. So
it definitely feels like an exchange. Everyone also, if this sounds like something you'd like to know more about, certainly get the book, but also we'll put Sarina's website address there and chat to her about a cooking class, because it is unlike any other cooking class you've had. No matter what you learn, and you'll learn a lot, you'll get a beautiful meal out of it as well. Sarina, thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been absolutely wonderful. Cannot wait for our next encounter.
Thank you, Dani. Thanks for having me on, and I hope I was coherent.
Definitely, more than. This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.